Welcome to Season 4 of the Changing Earth podcast with Sara F. Hathaway, blending survival fiction and fact to bring you entertaining education that will help you dream, survive, and thrive. And now, here's your host, Sara F. Hathaway.
Hello and welcome back to the Changing Earth podcast. This is episode number 162, Season 4, episode 38. I'm going to level with you right off the bat. I have a huge, very interesting interview for you today with Aaron Frankel. So I don't want to really waste any time getting into that because it's going to fill up our show time. So I just want to give a quick Patreon shout out to all my Patreon members over there supporting the show, showing their love, and getting access to all of those great freebies. Thank you so much for your support. It is what keeps this show on the air. The Dark Days of Denver is back. I'm working on it diligently, and it will officially be released on September 21st. That's a Friday. And everybody who's a Patreon member will get early access to that book as soon as it's ready to go. And I'll let you know as soon as you can pre-order the ebook on Amazon. The Self-Reliance Experience is also happening September 22nd and 23rd in September. And I cannot wait to see you out there. I'm so excited about getting back out there. So hopefully I'll get to see you all out there and come on out and visit me. That's at the Self-Reliance Experience, and that is September 22nd and 23rd. So last week on the Changing Earth podcast, our characters all hid themselves in a freezer to avoid the bombing that was going on. So this week we're going to catch back up with them. And, bombing on American soil is kind of an odd topic, so definitely one that we hope doesn't happen anytime soon. However, with just everything that's happened with North Korea and Iran, we had this threat of the nuclear bombing. So that's where I decided to take this show today. And Aaron Frankel is on, and he has a wonderful interview, just packed with information on this topic. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into Chapter 38 of Battle for the South. Chapter 38. The freezer shook under the barrage. They huddled together in the dark, trying to avoid the falling items that had been stored on the shelves. Finally, the noise of the assault ceased. Bennett clicked on a small glow rod. He handed it to Erica and tried to open the door. It wouldn't budge. He strained against the metal, but all his efforts were in vain. "Oh man, this is not happening," Erica muttered to herself as she watched Bennett straining. "Come on!" Bennett yelled at the door. Vince rested in a corner. The metal floor had begun warming. He grabbed one of the frozen steaks and put it on his face. Jensen's arm was another dilemma. If they couldn't get the door open, they couldn't get his arm cleaned out. Star checked, but there was nothing of use in here. Dexter joined Bennett, and they pounded relentlessly on the door. Dexter called out for help until his throat was dry and raspy. No one came. Bennett looked at his watch and began scanning the area. It had to be daytime now because Erica felt the heat start to intensify. "Look, ice cream," Bennett said, handing out the cartons. "Really, Bennett?" Erica questioned. "Why not? In a few hours it will be liquid anyway," he commented. "I'll take chocolate chip cookie dough in that case," Nancy chimed in. Once the ice cream was handed out, he took the rest and put it on another shelf. He lifted the empty shelf off its brackets. "This is the plan," he said. "Debris has blocked the door. Eventually, they'll search this area. We have to make sure we're making noise while they're searching. We'll go on half-hour shifts of banging the shelf against the door. Dexter, you're up first." He went over to Sergeant Jensen and ripped the sleeve off his shirt so he could get a good look at the bullet wound. Bennett agreed with Star that there was nothing they could do except wrap it up to stop the bleeding and put cold items on it to try and numb the pain. However, Erica watched the packages of meat wrapped in butcher paper begin to drip blood on the floor. She knew they wouldn't have frozen items for long. Nancy, Star, and Erica cleared the shelves of all the products and piled them neatly on the back wall. Piling them together would help them stay frozen longer, but they had other plans in mind. They lined up the shelves so Vince and Jensen could lay up on top and whoever wasn't pounding endlessly on the door could sit on the bottom. Waiting in the soft glow from the stick in her hand, Erica took the time to catch up with her mom. Nancy had enjoyed the position in Dallas, but without her grandsons around, life just wasn't the same. Brett's daughter was wonderfully welcoming, and she and her husband had 2 children. Nancy helped to look after them, but it only made the pain of missing her family worse. She was hopeful for a reunion after Erica had contacted her from Minnesota, but she knew after the results of the regional meeting that would no longer be possible. Then one day Matthew Tweed had shown up. Apparently her occupational refugee pass had been denied. We took a train back to Vegas, but I knew something was wrong. None of it felt right. We had all seen Matthew's desire to discredit you, and when it all blew up in his face, he was livid. I knew he wanted revenge, but he housed me well and often spent evenings talking about what happened to him after the Great Quake, Nancy explained. The governing board made him the scapegoat, Mom, Erica told her. I had a run-in with Miss Corrine Tillman, leader of the Western FEMA region in Colorado. She told me that they didn't want to make a martyr of me, and that's why they let us go. She didn't seem to have a problem with it anymore, though, and was going to ship us back to the Capitol to be tried and executed. Matthew was just a pawn. Erica, Star, and Dexter told Nancy all about their adventures across the country as they took turns with Bennett banging. Every hour they hoped the door would open, but it didn't. They ate thawing vegetables and stood in a couple inches of blood and slime as they pounded. Bennett said that night had fallen as 2100 clicked over on his watch. All night long they pounded, hoping someone would hear them. Erica was dreading the heat of another day as 10 o'clock came, and it was her turn to start battering the door. The noise of the endless hammering left her exhausted from a sleepless night. The circumstances and the endless bang, bang, bang began to eat into every fiber of her body. The fury inside of her was getting harder and harder to control. The nightmare of being trapped in the bomb shelter after the Great Quake haunted her every thought. No, 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 Erica screamed. You have got to be kidding me. Someone help. She furiously slammed on the door until the shelf broke into pieces in her hands. The door, dented from hours of endless thwacking, stood unmoving in her path. Erica, Bennett said softly, taking the shelf part from her hand. It's okay. We're all together. We're alive. They'll find us. Bennett's right, baby, Vince agreed from his groggy state. Erica stood quietly panting in the pool of blood. Suddenly her eyes opened wide. I think I hear something, Erica told them, snatching the piece of shelving back from Bennett. She thumped on the wall. Rap, 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 rap. Thump, thump, came the reply. They're out there, Erica elated. Dexter and Star jumped around in a circle while the blood sludge splashed on their boots. There was lots of rubbing noises and thumps on the door, but finally it cracked open a little and a dog nose appeared. Trucker, Dexter yelled. It's okay, buddy, we're here. The dog whined, scratched, and barked at the door. Is that you, Dex? Greg asked. Yeah, Dex replied, and us, the rest of them yelled. Daniel, call Trucker back, Greg told him. There was noise of a vehicle and people grunting as the debris was cleared. After another hour, Greg got the door open enough for them to climb through one at a time. Erica emerged, helping Vince out the door. Medic! Greg yelled, watching Erica strain under his weight. He ran over and took Vince onto his shoulder. Erica straightened out and blinked in the bright desert sun. The whole city had been destroyed. Massive craters from the relentless bombing made the ground look like Swiss cheese, and building debris lay everywhere. Bennett had helped Jensen out of the freezer and watched him and Vince get led away by the medics. Earl and Kay hugged Erica and their grandchildren tightly, then went to follow Vince. I never thought I'd see the day our own weapons of mass destruction will be turned against the citizens of this country, Bennett declared, staring out at the devastation. The stink of the bodies starting to decay was so thick they could taste it in their mouths. Greg handed them masks. The protective layer would prevent them from breathing the dust, but it didn't stop the horrific smell. Erica went to Dexter and Star, who were hugging Daniel. Her mom stood by closely, just watching and smiling. Erica hugged Nancy tightly, and Daniel ran to her as well. It was hard to believe that amidst all this chaos and destruction, they could smile, but they did. Erica and her family get out of the bomb shelter into safety, And, definitely a scary situation. I did lots of research on post-World War II on just how the city would look after this type of intensive bombing, and really scary stuff, actually. So they enter into this altered landscape. But really, our biggest threat of bombing is from a nuclear threat. And here to discuss that today is Aaron Frankel. Aaron Frankel is the host of In the Rabbit Hole podcast. And in his free time, Aaron enjoys hogging the remote, surfing, scotch, mental masturbation, and debate over philosophical topics and shooting stuff. Usually not all at the same time. Aaron's got a bigger bio that he'll bring with him when he comes on the show. But if you want to get a hold of Aaron, you can do so at www.intherabbithole.com. It's www.intherabbithole.com. So let's go ahead and welcome Aaron to the show. Today I have Aaron Frankel back on the show from Into the Rabbit Hole. Hi, Aaron. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. We're coming up to the end of my book here, Battle for the South, and so some scary stuff's happening. We got some bombing going on, and so why don't you first, before we jump right into that, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, let folks know what you do, what you're about, and where they can find you at.
Deal. So I am Aaron. I am the host of In the Rabbit Hole. It is an urban survival centric podcast. Really, it's kind of a distinction without a difference. It's a podcast about survival and preparedness from the perspective of somebody who lives in a major city, and planning is largely done from that standpoint. I try to introduce, the prepper community gets so dark and so serious, and I try to introduce as much humor into the show as I can. So gallows humor, a bit of it, but that's it. And the core message of our show is stay safe and sound, safe in person and sound in mind.
I love that. Oh, I've had so many people ask me like urban setting questions and stuff like that. And I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a country girl, I've lived out in the country like forever. I'm like, yeah. I don't even know what they think about, I don't. So.
I think as a short side, John, I think the funny and dirty truth is there really isn't that big of a difference. It's really not.
Right.
Things happen. If things happen and it's in a city, they're going to happen faster. And where people are going to be a problem regardless of whether you're in a rural setting. We looked at what Fairfall had to say on the topic, and there was just as much of people were just as violent and just as much of a problem in rural settings as they were in urban. You just have to deal with more of them. And then there's the concern of, if it gets dirty enough, how do you get out of a city? And those are the differences. But other than that, it's all the same.
Yeah. This is kind of off topic for today, but my biggest fear would be like the food supply into a city. They could easily shut down the food supply into a city, and then you're just kind of like, okay, now I'm dependent upon the government to feed me. Yeah. And when you get to that point, then it's like, what choice do you have anymore? So that's kind of freaky to me. Yeah. Like I'll stay out in the country. I'm good. So today, my characters in the book, they experience the first time that the new government bombed U.S. soil. So I don't see that as something that would really happen because it would destroy so much infrastructure. They really wouldn't want to do that. There's easier ways to handle people than that. But I did want to talk about a nuclear threat, because that's something that a lot of us think about nowadays and just kind of are concerned with, we have Iran, we have North Korea, and I don't know if you can depend on them to be stable or not. So it's a good area to be like, all right, let's decide what we would want to do. So, so my first question for you today is, why would you even want to have a plan in place for this to happen? Like, would you rather just blow up with the bomb, or right? I mean, it's over. Cool. We're done.
Right.
Like, are you going to try to?
I do want to give a warning I'll answer a little bit of that first. I think the big takeaway in most instances is that surviving some sort of a nuclear event is much more probable than people think it is. For a couple of reasons, but it is much more survivable. Short of full-on global thermal nuclear war, which is extremely unlikely. There's been a few recent books on the topic by former Rand employees and things like that. I think they're a little too impressed with their own opinions, but anyway, not to get on, but I do want to, before we get too deep into this is a huge and very complicated topic. Nuclear war, nuclear energy, radiation, surviving it, all these things. This is a massive topic. And there is a tendency for people to come on and say they are an expert. They may be an expert in one very specific facet of dealing with this, but they're generally not a generalist in it. And what I've found often is that you'll have people relying on hearsay information. So I would take most things that people say with a little bit of a grain of salt and do them. If this is something you're really interested in and really concerned about, do your own research and go to experts with the credentials and experience specifically in that field. So EMPs are a great example. There's a lot of electrical engineers that are out there, smart guys and gals, but they have all kinds of opinions about EMPs, yet they're electrical engineers without, say, the specific study and credentials in electromagnetic interference. There's only one of those guys that I'm aware of that speaks publicly about it and also happens to be in the community. His name is Arthur Bradley, or Dr. Arthur Bradley, if you want to look at him up. He is a electrical engineer working for NASA. That is his job. He is the electrical interference guy, or electromagnetic interference guy for NASA. So that's one of those instances. So I would say I'm not an expert on anything except how to anger my wife and what kind of scotch and cigars I like. Other than that, all I can do is offer the information I've gained from seeking out experts that are specific experts in specific fields of this, and then trying to relay the information as best I can.
Yeah, that's awesome too, for you to preface it that way. And I like your take on finding the information from the people that are, knowledgeable in that area, and then piecing it all together instead of listening to the...
And as a last short side piece of that, when I was in architecture, we would run into the same thing. For a while, I worked specifically in hospitality design, and you would get architects that were not educated specifically in hospitality design, but they had a lot of opinions on it. And then you'd run into other people that, maybe they did do hospitality design, but they had all kinds of opinions about shopping centers and, why is this, they're wasting space here. And it's like, well, no, you don't actually understand the logistics of 18-wheelers coming in and out of a shopping center.
Yeah,
so be
fair
quiet.
enough.
You don't know what you're talking about. And so you do that. It's like, okay, well, you're an expert in the general field, but not that one thing or that thing specifically. So it's a pain. I'll admit that now. And it's been a pain for me trying to source information, but it is what you have to do if you want the best information possible.
I like it.
Specifically to your question, why is it essential to have a plan? And I think this is a big thing. And I think the easiest way to state it is that bad things don't call ahead and make an appointment. This is my general answer to why, when people say, why are you a prepper, or why is preparation important?
Mr. Murphy giving you a call up on the phone. Hey, I'm about to come knocking.
That doesn't happen. Or I guess for a simple example, that nail in the road isn't going to call you and say, hey, by the way, Tuesday 3 p.m. I'm thinking of jamming myself in your tire. Is that a good time for you? So what we do is we learn to change tires in advance. We keep a spare, hopefully. We keep the necessary tools in our vehicle to change flats or repair them, depending on the situation. So this is not new. This is not unusual. This is something that for most people, most responsible adults, right? They plan and prepare, at least to some degree, for things that they're used to. Preppers, well, we have a broader sense of our own personal responsibility, and I got to take care of me, my own, and in my greater community. So planning and preparing is essential, because bad things do not call ahead and give you notice. Even hurricanes don't give you that much notice.
Right.
So you will be orders of magnitude better off if you plan in advance, to the best of your abilities, and that's why I always say sound. It's, stay as reasonably sane about it all as you can.
Exactly.
And reaction without prior planning is mostly just going to be comprised of an emotional response and hasty decisions. Now, speaking to this topic specifically, with a nuclear attack, you may get 15 minutes, you may get 30 minutes, or it may be, surprise, flashbulbs go off and there's your nuclear event.
Yeah. Like, what would they do if they knew one was coming towards us? Well, do you think they would even say anything?
Yeah, I think they would. I think we can. I think and there's conspiracy theories about it, but the alerts that went out in Hawaii kind of proved that.
Fair enough. Yeah.
You send out a message, people don't really panic. Panic is actually, in the first initial phases, panic is actually less common than the locked up sheep-like catatonic state. That really is actually the default behavior for human beings by and large. And with a ballistic missile, coming from another nation, you get 15 to 30 minutes advance notice, which still isn't enough. I mean, if you're near some sort of shelter, you can duck into it.
That's what I was going to say. Everybody's basically just going inside at that point. You're not going to get in your car and start rolling if you know there's you only got 15 minutes, right?
Yeah. You're not. It depends. It's and that.
Where's your security zone? Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you feel safest?
Yeah. So there's essentially, without getting too deep into the weeds, there's essentially 3 layers of a blast. There's the initial blast. There's the second wave of blast. And then there's the third wave, the zone that the EMP is going to impact. If we're talking about something ground level or close to ground level, and this again, it starts getting way off into the weeds when you start adding in, are we talking ground level? Are we talking a couple hundred feet off the ground? Are we talking a mile in the air?
If it does hit the ground, does it still have an EMP effect?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the EMP.
Oh, interesting.
So the easiest way to think about how altitude impacts a blast is the closer to the ground it is, the less widespread those 3 zones are going to be. The higher the altitude, the wider it's going to be, to a degree. And then you get high enough into the altitude and the blast becomes less of an issue, and you're getting more into the EMP is more of a problem. And
it has a bigger spread though at that point, right?
Right. It has a bigger spread, and and as best as I know, or whatever, share publicly. I'm just kidding. No one has developed neutron bombs or tested neutron bombs. So if anybody is that big of a nuke geek, that would be the exception to the rule, where if it gets up high enough, the blast really isn't your issue. It's the EMP. I think, and I think the other thing too about this, as far as like planning and everything else goes, a terrorist isn't going to call ahead and say, at Tuesday at 3 p.m., I'm going to detonate a 20 kiloton nuclear warhead in downtown. Is that good for you?
Yeah. Does that work for you guys?
Yeah. Or if we get some of the more popular EMP book things, or where North Korea or somebody uses a container ship and launches it off one of our coasts. Also, yeah. So there's those things. That's why it's better to have some sort of plan and have a working knowledge of what to do than it is to merely react if you see the flashbulb, so to speak.
So if you were in the area and, you go into your shelter or whatever, you're in your basement, you're in your house even, how much food and water should you have on hand? Like, we always 72 hours, right? Of course, that's just bare minimum as far as I'm concerned. But what would be the recommended there for holding out till it was basically safe to re-enter?
So I would say a 14-day absolute minimum, and I'm stressing minimum. This gives you enough time to deal, in a lot of cases, and we can get into more detail about this in a bit, but in a lot of times you're able to wait out the half-life of fallout if you've got 14 days. We're preppers, so a lot of us are like, 14 days.
14 days, that's a joke.
What are you, new? Come on.
Right.
And I wouldn't, and so, but I would say 14 days in a minimum if you're somebody who, because, and I think this is armchair preppers, get in a twit about things about how long, but hey, if you're, you
live in an apartment in LA or something, you can't store up that much food. I mean, I totally get that.
And even beyond, like, food isn't that complicated, but water. Water is 231 cubic inches per gallon at 8
and it weighs a ton.
Yeah, it's 8 round up 8.5 pounds per gallon. that's okay, sure. I'm going to have 50-gallon drums of water in my LA apartment. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
So,
just storing that in the corner in the closet or something. Yeah, that's tough. I mean,
yeah.
that's really
Yeah.
rough.
So, but, a few 5-gallon jugs of water in an apartment is doable.
Do
If I
fill up
think,
your bathtub like as soon as you get the notice, bathtub full.
yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. Any of these. So I think beyond that, if you're in the first or second layer of the blast zone, we've kind of laid out this visualization of a rough blast zone. This is someone else's problem because you don't exist anymore.
Right?
And this is the
Yeah.
thing that, you are part of the mushroom cloud for all intents and purposes, but everybody else, you're much better off than you think you might be. And as far as medical supplies are really hard to judge in a matter of days because it's
Right.
not a matter of days. It's a matter of what was the event, what were the injuries, what are
How
the medical
bad did
supplies.
somebody get injured? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, are we talking about radiation burns where, and how severe are they? How often are we needing to change bandages, and things like that. But, as far as medical supplies goes, besides having on hand potassium iodide, which we can talk about more if you want to, but besides having potassium iodide on hand, your kit really isn't going to change that much. You're still going to need the same anti-nausea, diarrhea, fever reducers, painkillers, supplies to deal with burns, things like that. Just a normal medical kit.
I've also heard that you can paint yourself with iodine. So is that like
You
have you
cannot
heard of that?
so, and this gets a bit geeky, but I do want to I do want to acknowledge the chemists and the chemical engineers in the audience. You cannot paint yourself with iodine, but you can paint, well, except for one very rare strain, but you can paint yourself with iodide. So what people are used to seeing, that brown liquid that you get swabbed down with before surgery,
Right.
or that you can use on cuts and wounds, that is iodide. So iodide is
Okay.
one iodine atom or molecule and one usually one potassium. It can be something else, but iodine in its natural state is actually very toxic to well, any living
Human.
tissue. So
Okay, got you.
yeah, and
Yep.
it's weird, but it's one of those things. The someone will get fussy about it, but it is kind of also
Yep.
important to know that somebody doesn't just go buy a bottle of iodine, thinking that
Uh,
when they should be
they're
using iodine.
like, oh, this is gonna
Iodide.
work.
Yeah,
Ah!
exactly.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, that makes a lot more sense because I was like, I had that question come up. So there is actually a nuclear reactor in Southern California that they have shut down.
Hmm.
They had an incident there, and it permanently shut down the reactor in
Mhm.
Southern California. Although they still store a fair amount of radioactive material there,
Mhm.
because they had all the cooling rods and everything. None of it's been transported off site. They're actually going to bury it on the beach. Not too, yeah, it's
I make
really
the face,
is.
but it's not as bad as people think, and I
Yeah, it's
think,
not.
and if people even want to feel better about that, typically those rods you're talking about, 5% enrichment, whereas, you know, uh, a second gen nuke bomb is going to be a 90% or better um, uh, concentration.
Yeah.
The right word just
Yeah,
left me, but
I just brought it
yeah.
up because, my characters are traveling through that area.
Okay.
So they're being exposed to radiation basically. So I
Hmm.
did the
Yeah.
iodide research and I was like, oh, this is totally different than like what everybody says. This is actually potassium iodide,
Yeah.
not iodine. Everybody's like, yeah, so there is a big difference and it definitely
Yeah.
should be noted
Yeah.
like that. That is not what you
Iodide,
want.
good for you. Iodine,
Iodide,
poisonous. With one
gotcha.
exception that's not even worth mentioning, but just, yeah, iodine is
Right? Yeah.
poisonous.
Let's not confuse anybody
Yeah,
at that
yeah, bad.
point. So, how about communication? Because you said that the EMP would affect the area.
Hmm.
Um, how would you communicate with anybody out of that, is in that zone?
So EMPs are widely misunderstood. I blame us as preppers a little bit for that, primarily fiction authors. But
Right,
I
for
think
like
that's the thing.
extravagizing it so that
Yeah,
it's bigger, more sensational.
well, yeah, and I think that's the thing that people have to remember is when you're reading fiction, like, hey, the author needed to be able to take artistic license. You can't take everything you read in fiction or on the interwebs, for that
Right.
matter, at face
Well,
value.
that's why I do the show, right? We
Yeah,
talk. We have the fiction story, and now here's
there you go.
reality. You know, let's connect it with the reality.
So the short answer, EMPs are a big topic. So the short answer from what I've gotten from the person I referenced earlier, Dr. Arthur Bradley, the short answer is if the devices are turned off at the time of the event, they're likely fine unless they're plugged directly into wall power.
Okay.
So you have very sensitive electronics are susceptible, and electrical grids, because one is very small and very sensitive, and essentially what the EMP is doing is causing a surge, a quick flash surge.
Kind of like a huge lightning strike across the whole thing.
Kind of, yeah. And it's very fast, and it's not quite as powerful as people think it is. And then the other side of that is the electrical grid. And the electrical grid is susceptible because it acts like a giant antenna. It's very long, very spread out, lots of room to suck up a lot of that, that EM energy and bring it in and cause havoc. So there are ways to shield it, and we can talk about that later. But to speak directly to your question, communication. This is hugely important no matter what preparedness topic we're talking about. And personally, when I look at preparedness, I use kind of 8 categories to make sure that someone or something or a situation is covered. And I would say communication definitely falls into that. And that is your ability to make contact with other people and or gather information.
Right.
You know, you need to be able to receive information at a minimum. So hopefully, if something happens, alerts will go out letting you know about the dangers and about what rescue efforts are going on and what areas to avoid. I do want to give the caveat that you can't really rely on the government alerts alone. Recently, we saw an example of this. There was a breakdown of the alerts and the reverse 911 system and other government alert systems putting out, and it meant that they put out information like way too slow, like hours and hours too slow, and people ended up dying in the California fires because of this.
Yeah.
And I think from what I got from some of the news reports and some information that was given to me was the only people who were really effective in that situation as far as civilians go were civilians who were hamsters. So people listening in on ham and also listening in on police and fire scanners to actively stay on top of what was going on. And that's, you know, the other big takeaway there is staying on top of what's going on. And then the other piece of that is being able to send communication is really important. You may need help, and the only way you're going to get help is if you're able to send out a call for help, right?
Right.
And then there's simply just, if you're in the situation, there's letting other people that care about you know via text, or if you're lucky, voice, that you're okay, so that they're not having to worry about you. I mean, I know every time I go through a hurricane, any of my friends that are anywhere else in the country, you know, I'm getting all these texts and everything after the hurricane. Are you okay? Or, you know, are you wearing ruby red slippers? And, you know,
everybody's like, are you burning up out there? I'm like, no, dude, we're good. Like our area is not being affected at all. Yeah. So, what about like landlines? Are they going to be just gone in an event like that?
In an event like that, I would guess that landlines are absolutely gone because they're going to suffer from the same situation, from the same effects that the grid. You know, you're talking about long runs of wire that act like giant antennas, and they're on the telephone. You know, it's the telephone poles or the power poles.
Yeah.
They're, you know, and even if the lines are buried beneath ground, they're not really, in most instances, buried deep enough to be a good insulation. So you're dealing with the same issue. You know,
I don't know who has a landline still anymore, but
the most
if you
random
got one,
people,
you know, you try to try it.
Yeah, and even then, I think a lot of people who will say, "Oh, I have a landline now," actually, what they have is, and they still have a phone receiver and stuff in their home, but it's actually a digital line going over using the internet. Basically, it's a VoIP line. So.
Yep. It makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that's not really going to work. So,
Yeah.
so what other type of items? Because I've heard like, if you have reams of paper or whatever, you can stack up your magazines, your books or whatever. Then it makes a wall so that the radiation can't come in, and all kinds of stuff, right? So, what besides having our food and water on hand and praying to goodness gracious that we're not in that blast zone, what would you recommend to have on hand for, such a type of a nuclear event? Like, do we need a clean room for washing people off, or?
Yeah, so it's easy to get to go way down the rabbit hole if you're preparing specifically for this kind of event. You're starting to talk about bunkers and decontamination rooms and all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah. I won't do a bunker. I don't care. I'll be like, I'm dead. I'm done. I can't do a bunker. I can't stay underground for that long, man.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at that, then you're looking for very specific information, and I don't know that we could really do it justice in the course of this interview. And that's, you want to start looking at stuff. There's, I just forgot his name, but you may want to start looking into the author that wrote Strategic Relocation. He's written a few books on that topic. As far as decontamination goes, for the most of us that are living, fairly everyday lives and aren't going to build bunkers and clean rooms and do stuff like that, I think the safest thing is basically before anyone enters a structure, they should remove all their clothes, soap and water, and they should decontaminate themselves outside. The nice part, not that there's a super nice part, but if you're going to look for a sunny side, the sunny side to Fallout, if you get it on you, is it's just, for all intents and purposes, it's just dirt and dust. So it washes right out. One of the big concerns, don't scrub yourself raw if this is the situation. Just wash yourself normally, wash the hairy areas of your body a little bit better, but you don't scrub your skin raw. You're actually causing more of an issue for a couple of reasons. If you do that, just wash yourself off, walk into the structure naked. It's a party. It's supposed to be
right.
It's a party. So
no,
yeah, and then go in like that, and basically don't bring those clothes in. Don't pick up any of your clothes, and bring them in with you. And I don't know that I would suggest ever putting them back on again, but
yeah,
but that's it.
So you should definitely have like extras, wherever you are. What about if you were out and you had your go bag on you?
I think this may be a case where carry a poncho and do your best. I mean, I think.
Oh, fair enough. Okay, that would work.
There's only so much any of us are ever going to do to be able to prepare for everything, and this also might be an instance where I carry a dry bag in my go bag, just because most of the stuff that I'm dealing with hurricanes and floods. So.
Right.
And it may be a good practice for if it's something you're concerned about, then using your dry bag to protect your bug-out bag or whatever may be a good idea if you're going to go through
it's easy to make one too. You can just use a garbage bag and put a couple slits in it, duct tape those areas so that they don't rip, and then just throw that over your backpack. And
essentially you're trying to protect yourself and any belongings that you have to keep with you. You're trying to protect them from getting any of the fallout. And the other nice thing is Fallout has a very short half-life. So, the initial 72, 96 hours, that's when you need to be worried about it. After that, like, I wouldn't go rolling around in it, but, you're not super worried about it. Other than that, like, you're going to be indoors for a long time. So, it's the usual stuff. Books, board games, and anything.
Flashlights. Yeah.
Flashlights, booze and cigars. I don't know, and maybe things to make sure that you don't end up with there was a lot of pregnancies after that scare in Hawaii. So, maybe,
right. It's true.
Something to be aware of how people pass the time. So.
With all the unemployment in like 2008, there was a huge spike in the birth rates and stuff.
Yeah,
what else do you have to do?
Yeah, I think other than those, like being mindful of fallout and things like that, the other big question to always ask is, what is the minimum that you need for it, and what is the maximum that you can reasonably afford, both in money and space, for any kind of given situation that covers like the basic 8 survival categories. And I usually, have them as body temperature, water, rest, food, health, security, contact, and information.
Okay.
I think the other thing that would be unique to this kind of situation would be some sort of small Faraday cage or container with some basic blackout kit type items and essential electronics. Like,
why don't you, for anybody who's listening that doesn't know what a Faraday cage is, why don't you just briefly, tell them what that's about?
In a nutshell, a Faraday cage, think of it this way: it's a metal box with that is sealed tightly to basically absorb and shield the contents from electromagnetic energy. I think that's as much of a nutshell as I can make it. They're made to be sometimes not complicated enough, but often more complicated than they need to be. It's really about that. It's about, and it doesn't take much. It really, the joke about, tinfoil hats, tinfoil can actually work. You just have to seal it correctly. And we can get into that in a bit. But yeah, in a nutshell, a Faraday cage is a metal box or container that shields electronic devices from electromagnetic energy.
So, and if the listeners, if you really don't know what a Faraday cage is, there's like so many resources you can go to online and figure it out. Like Google that stuff and you'll be all set. So, I'm like, I don't know, country girl. So I'm like, whatever, Faraday cage. I don't care. Bring it, we'll figure it out as we go. So that brings me to my next point. We kind of mentioned this before the show. Like, news is so yucky nowadays. And I've tuned out too. I'm honest. I would just go into my YouTube sources as far as it goes, and I just can't stand listening to the talking heads. However, we need to be abreast of some things that are happening. So what's your opinions kind of there? What would you recommend people?
So my opinion is most of the news today is worth ignoring. We don't seem to have news anymore. We seem to have entertainment in the form of true reality TV, right? Like, it's like all the news organizations went, wait, we are reality TV. And if we just pump it up a little bit more.
That's so true.
And that's really what we've got now. And, they're in the business of keeping eyeballs on eyes, and human beings love watching a train wreck, whether it's a real train wreck or not. So that's what, that's what we get. We get what we ask for. We get what we pay attention to. So, I'm like you.
Hopefully they'll get the hint that a lot of people are tuning out.
Yeah,
and
one would hope.
But back some quality.
I worry though. I was like, is it just my friends that are tuning out, or is it enough people that I don't know. It's kind of like certain kinds of music. I'm like, how is that person topping the charts? Their music's terrible. Well, I guess. Some people like it, not me.
Some people, if we were all the same, it would be a very boring world.
Oh God, yeah. So I think, but it is important. News is important for a reason. You want to be aware of potential dangers and any sort of imminent threats. So I keep a light approach to the news. I tend to just kind of scan the front pages of sources that I know aren't going to make me crazy. And really what I'm looking for is the temperature of the world. I'm looking for any signs of civil unrest, anything that I think is a legitimate concern in foreign affairs, anything to do with the economy. Generally not on a day-by-day basis. While I watch things on a day, I try to take them in the context of a week, a month, or a quarter to gauge where they are, because while you can have things turn on a dime, I think it is unusual. Usually you get if you're paying attention, you get pretty good notice that something's not right, and it seems to be sliding. And I think the other thing too is to not let yourself get overloaded by watching the news too much or reading too much into it. And then the other thing is, you do need to stay aware so that you're not blindsided by it. Personally, one of the things I did was I got completely off Facebook, and I was not a big person to take in news there, but I found that I was watching news trickle through my feed when I was still on Facebook, and that was part of what was making me just like, right. And I think now that it's like I'm off that and off most social media in general, and I take a more deliberate approach to consuming news and how much of it I consume. in general, I feel better about things.
Yeah,
So,
I'm with you. I hardly ever look at my like news feed anymore
mhm.
on Facebook. I just use it to communicate with, the people who are listening to my show, reading my books and stuff, and just go into my groups and pay attention there. And then otherwise it's like, bleh, whatever.
I had people get mad at me
Right?
for getting off Facebook, and they were
Yeah.
like, please stay off. And I'm like, look, I have an email list. I have a website that has a comment section. Like, I'm not hard to find. I'm not going to make it.
Yep.
I'm just not going to be in this place that I hate to make life convenient for you. I'm
For you.
sorry. So,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I hear you.
yeah,
Yep,
I'll get
I
out
get
every.
it. I'm like, I wish I could, but I'm like, man, I don't know. That's where I like communicate with so many people. So I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
so how can I do this to like streamline the process and just so I'm not getting like bombarded with the BS, and
Yeah, it's
oh
tough.
my
It's tough.
gosh, just beat down by, people with different opinions and I'm getting told, the men in the coats are coming for me. And I'm like, really? Come on, dude. Like, we have no free speech anymore. Like,
Yeah.
nope, can't have that opinion.
No,
Well, I
can't
got
have
a
that.
different opinion.
Yeah.
And I've always been kind of a different gal. So if you don't like it, well, it's no skin off my back, not yet.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. You're not making me want to go back. I'm not seeing a compelling
Yeah,
reason to
no.
go back.
Like I say, it's all about my groups. I just keep going into my groups and seeing who, what's
That
going
I can
on.
understand.
Who can I
Yeah,
help out?
I had a group on there, and we managed to move off to another more private platform. So we found a solution for that. But those groups, like, yeah, I know when we were shutting down
Yep.
one of the groups that we had, like some people were getting emotional, and I don't
Oh,
blame
yeah.
them. But we made sure we gave them some place to go first. So
An option.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. So, yeah, news, like you say, just keep abreast of it, but don't
Don't let it
get
rule. Don't let it rule or
overwhelmed.
ruin your day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's because it will, man. It's just so
Yeah.
depressing.
Yeah.
So, what are some likely targets that we should avoid if it's imminent
I
kind
have
of
a
thing?
love-hate relationship with this question. So
Uh-huh.
the short version of the backstory is I had to deal with this a little bit when I was in facilities management, and we were dealing with when we were dealing with skyscrapers and electrical plants and things like that. Back then, we were a little worried about the terrorism we have now. We were also worried about eco-terrorism. And then there was concern for the executives and things like that. So that's a little bit of the backstory of why I'm about to say what I'm saying. You do that enough, and what I found is I don't really put stock in saying avoid this place, avoid that place anymore in the context of something like this. Like, I don't go to concerts anymore, not because I think it's going to be a terrorist target, but just I guess I'm getting old and crotchety. I don't want to be around that many people and that much, that many loud noises. So, and I don't like crowds. I don't want to be in a confined space with a crowd. So for me,
Yeah, me neither.
that's how I avoid things. But as far as avoiding things, because out of concern for something like this, I don't really put stock in it. Like I said, there was a time when I did, but but I just don't anymore. This kind of goes back to something that we touched on when we were talking about why it's important to have a plan. And the reality is you're not likely ever going to know the time or place of an event like this in any way, shape, or form. If you do, it's probably already too late. And again, we're back to you're watching the flash bulb and your ticket's getting punched, to mix metaphors. So I think the Twin Towers were one of those very rare examples of something where you could say, it's probably a good idea to avoid this place because it had a repeated history of terrorist attacks for whatever reason that's not worth going into. They kept, terrorists kept saying they wanted to blow that up. You and I, most people would, what are they going to attack? Oh, Washington, D.C. or the Washington Monument or the White House.
Well, that's what I was thinking too, like likely cities, maybe.
Yeah, I guess if you want to look at there's caveats to this. So if you want to look at likely cities, yeah, you're going to talk about the major cities. You're going to talk about likely New York first. People want to say Washington, but wow, that would be tricky for the guys trying to pull it off. Or LA or something like that. But really, I think the way to look at it is, it's got to be a huge symbol and a worthwhile symbol for whoever the attacker is. In practical terms, we're talking likely a terrorist. I don't put stock in a nation state lobbing a nuke at us. It's we can get into that too if you want to, but I don't put stock in that. And I think they're going to go for the unconventional, and there are safeguards in place and detection measures in place that, while not super public, they're also they're kind of hiding in plain sight measures to detect when radioactive or biological materials enter major cities. And there's also detection measures on interstate highways. There was a weird incident. I can't remember the exact details, but because it's been like 20 something years since the last time I had a conversation about this. But there was something where somehow radioactive material got mixed in with an I-beam, with the steel being made for I-beams at a plant in Mexico. Those I-beams were then put on a flatbed truck, rolled through the border, and the detection didn't go off necessarily at the actual border check, but it did go off pretty quickly after that on the highway. And there was a lot of black people in black cars and helicopters swooping in to be like, what the heck is on your truck?
Yeah.
And it was it was a fluke, but so there is
stuff.
Still
though, that was 20 years ago, so that they'd probably just come farther better now by this point. So that's actually pretty comforting to know that they have things like that in place.
Yeah, so there's stuff like that in place. I mean, I'm not aware of the full breadth and width of it,
right?
And not many people are, but I would say major cities most likely are pretty locked down like that. So, and that becomes the trouble. It's like, yeah, the major cities have the big sexy targets for terrorists, but they're also, not easy.
Most difficult, to hit.
Yeah, and people, 9/11. Well, if you were in facilities management for any length of time and dealing with security stuff like that, actually 9/11 was not a surprise. There was most of us going, when it happened, it was like, yep.
Why didn't you stop it?
Well, and so any of the conversations I was ever involved in, when it would come up, it was always stated as, this is the one thing we can't figure out how to protect against, and it was usually like, there was always half the group would always say, nobody's ever going to do that.
Nobody's going to do that.
And then somebody else would always be like, I'm surprised I haven't done it yet. So,
Gotcha.
it wasn't a huge surprise to I guess, people in that was their job, is to kind of look at things like that. So as far as a specific area to avoid,
yeah, Murphy, go call Murphy and find out, right?
Yeah, and then give me a call and let me know. I'm curious. Yep. Yeah. I think there's a lot of armchair warrioring on the internets about places to avoid and stuff like that. And while at a very surface level, I think some of those answers, it's like, yeah, at a surface level that makes sense, but you're not actually looking at the full context of the situation. So I don't put stock in it.
Gotcha. So there's different types of these nuclear weapons, right?
Yes.
So what ones should we be most concerned about if we're going to go out and research, because you hear about the little dirty bombs that they can transport in the trucks, stuff like that. And then the ones that they have on the warheads and things like that. So I'm just kind of totally naive when it comes to it. I'm like, nuclear sounds bad. We don't want that at all.
Yeah,
right?
So I don't know that it would be too much of a rabbit hole to try to go through all of them. I think there's for what most people need to know, there's really two kinds of bombs, two major categories. So we'll say first gen nuclear fission bomb. So that would have been the atom bomb. And then you have second generation, which would have been the fusion bomb, which is a hydrogen bomb or a thermonuclear weapon. And then you have dirty bombs, and dirty bombs.
I hate to cut you off right there, but sure. Is the hydrogen bomb the one that would it can destroy all of the organic life and still leave behind the structures?
So that is actually a third generation nuclear bomb that is a neutron bomb, and what it does exactly is debatable, because in theory it's still theoretical and no one's ever actually built one. I don't know. Yeah, you're getting, so the neutron bombs and any of the other stuff, the fusion drive stuff fusion drives and things like that, you're starting to get into the area of nuclear that is as far as I know, completely theoretical, and nobody's actually built
Okay.
it. So,
Sweet.
and not, you're talking about stuff that's not easy to build. I mean, none of this is really that easy to build, but you're talking about stuff that, no.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
So the third generation, that was the dirty bomb that you were going into.
No. A dirty bomb. Well, dirty bomb gets lumped in with nuclear bomb simply because it has radioactive material.
Okay.
But it is not anywhere really the same as, say, a fission or a fusion bomb. A fission or a fusion bomb are a I'm trying not to get too geeky with it, but so a fission or a fusion bomb are basically going to create a nuclear blast. We'll say a dirty bomb is not about the blast. A dirty bomb is about panic. So a dirty bomb is not going to be about ramming, causing two pieces of nuclear material to go together and cause a chain reaction. A dirty bomb is about taking radioactive material, and then typically you would mix it with a conventional type of explosive. So we'll just say, I don't know.
Okay.
You take a bunch of radiological material like medical waste or something like that, and you mix it in with plastic explosives, go into an area, blow it up. So what you're not really that worried about trying to give people radiation burns and things like that. Although terrorists would want that, they would want that for the 6 o'clock news.
Mm-hmm.
What you're trying to do is create panic with a dirty bomb. So a dirty bomb goes in, it goes off. Experts are going to go, oh, okay, it's a dirty bomb. Depending, again, this goes back to height advantage. If it's ground level, maybe you're talking, depending on how much explosive material they used, maybe you're talking about 100 meters, maybe, and if you start going up in altitude, that the radiological material can get into the air, into the atmosphere, then maybe you're talking about a few hundred meters, maybe more on a really windy day. But so it's not about the blast. It's not about the area of the blast. It's about what would immediately go on the news, which is people would hear a nuclear bomb went off we'll use my city. So people would hear a nuclear bomb went off in downtown Houston. That's what they would hear. And then they would hear dirty bomb, and people don't know what they are. And
exactly.
like, oh my God, I'm going to get radiation sickness. And then you're going to have people like, I'm having burns. And they're like 10 miles away from the event.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
So that's what a dirty bomb is. And
got it.
Even with the dirty bomb going off, what you're going to get is it's not really like, it's not good. I don't want anybody to think like, oh, it's not a big deal. It's a big deal,
right?
But really what's going to happen is immediately after that, the country would go in lockdown. Likely everybody's going to be freaked out, locked up in their homes for the next 3 to 5 days. And people are going to be panicked, and 911 services are going to be flooded because everyone's having radiation burns or palpitations or something. And so it's going to create a real strain on resources, and could cause, there's serious nationwide economic implications and things like that. So that's a dirty bomb. Some sort of nuclear bomb is going to have all the destruction and then all the chaos afterwards, or panic and chaos afterwards.
Do they have to put the big nuclear bombs on a warhead? Like, is that, that's the delivery method? Okay.
That is a delivery method. So in business terms, you could think of it like, what is your distribution method?
Right.
They could take a nuclear bomb and put it in an airplane and fly it over to a city, and boom. They could put it in a warhead, or they could put a warhead on a missile, shoot it into the air, or they could put it in a really big missile. So an intercontinental ballistic missile, and it goes from one continent to the next, or it could be as they put a bomb in a 50-gallon drum and wheel it into a building somewhere or something like that. So as far as delivery methods go, it's kind of up to the creativity of whoever's using it.
Designing it. Right. Okay.
And what they're trying to accomplish, or what they think they can get away with.
Because we always hear about the ballistic testing, right? They're testing a ballistic missile. They're testing a ballistic missile. It's like, does that necessarily mean that there's going to be a warhead on the front of it? Or, I mean, that's why I was just like, is that the only way to go?
That's the fear, right? So that's the fear.
Right.
It's like, okay, North Korea with a nuclear bomb, bad. North Korea with a nuclear bomb on a missile that can reach Japan, really bad.
Bad.
North Korea with a intercontinental ballistic missile that can reach California. Ooh, okay. Now it's on our doorstep. Now it's our problem. Although everybody gets worked up about North Korea, like I don't think they're good, but they have a long history. It's
being temperamental.
It's a long history of a cup and ball game. It's like, hey, we're going to be the bad kid that acts out and, do all these naughty things. And then they give us food and whatever else we want. And then, so we're quiet for a decade and then, and then on and on and on. The trouble becomes they have to keep ratcheting that up to get what they want. I think they're, bat crap crazy, but I don't think they're totally insane. And I think that's the other thing too, when you're looking at a lot of this, Personally, I don't put a lot of stock or concern, with the exception of Pakistan and
India.
Because
Pakistan and India have just been at each other, and they're both nuclear powers, so that's a little freaky.
And then we get into
come to our
doorstep.
But...
Iran or something like that. I think if one of those goofballs does something, they're going to be doing it to their neighbor. I'm not.
That's
which
kind
is
of my
great.
opinion.
It's just
it's not. It's horrible. I mean, none of it should go off at all. But
right. So I think. So I guess the real thing is, like, which one's the most concern? This is people, I would imagine, have gotten a sense of it. It's like everything with this. This is a really big question. It depends on the concern. I think to narrow things a bit, like I said, I'm more worried. I'm not that worried about this particularly, but if I was going to worry about it, I would worry about terrorists more so than nation states. Nation states have too much to lose. Their leaders are almost always hyper concerned with their legacies. I mean, remember the people in office are generally massive narcissists. So what they care about is, what does history say about them after they're gone? Whereas terrorists have everything to gain. They get to be a martyr and a hero to their people if they blow something up. I think so. To really narrow this down, if we were going to go with terrorists, I would say 20 kiloton nuclear warhead or something like that. Or, there's the dirty bomb option, but we'll stick with, something bigger and exciting. So a 20 kiloton tactical nuke, something in that size. You're talking about something that weighs a few hundred pounds. It's going to have at ground level, it's going to have those 3 layers of the blast are essentially going to impact a 5+ mile area.
Okay.
Maybe 6, maybe 7, depending. And then they can use a height advantage to increase that. So, put it in a drum, maybe they sneak in as a construction crew in the skyscraper somewhere and they go up, 50, 60 stories. And now they've got a wider spread. You do something like that in Manhattan or, I don't know, downtown Smallville, USA. If Smallville, USA had a 50-story building, then you're talking about 9/11 supersized 20x, So the higher you go, the more damage you can do, the more hoopla around it. But I think at that point, it's almost an academic discussion, because any nuclear bomb goes off in any city, anywhere in the country, and it's
going to be horrible.
The whole country is going to be just in pandemonium. And then we can go back to dirty bombs. We already kind of covered the concerns with those. There's a probability with that. They're a lot easier to make than I think. They're a lot easier to make than the general public is even aware of. I mean, there's a lot of radiological material that is actually around us in our everyday lives. We have medical waste. We have all kinds of stuff that I'm not going to go off on the list on them. But, those things could be harvested, put in a bomb. And again, it's not about the actual damage from the radiation. It's about just getting the nightly news to say a dirty bomb went off in small town USA or mega city USA.
Yeah, and they would say, like, nuclear bomb. Everybody would be like, ah!
The first 72 hours, they're all going to be saying it was a nuclear bomb. And then after 72 hours, it was a dirty bomb. And then after that, it's like, okay, well, 100 people got hurt.
Yeah.
But nuclear bomb. So
nuclear bomb. Yeah, freaking out.
We're back to
okay. So What about, so we touched a little bit on shelters, and I'm not going no fallout shelter. So what would you tell urban Joe who's not in the blast zone, for what to do? Just shelter in? Like, you do the tape around your window and like all that stuff? Or?
Yeah, I mean, you could.
I've got a lot of windows. I'm not gonna lie. Look, it right behind me.
Other than this room, I live in a glass house, literally.
Oh,
so,
okay, yeah.
So yeah, it's not super. Everybody's like a prepper that lives in a glass house. I'm like,
yeah. I'm kind of the same way.
Yeah.
We got a lot of windows. It's log cabin, but like we got a lot of windows.
Everybody does, yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing. Yeah, you can tape them off, but I wouldn't be if. Well, I guess I'll start at the top. So anything that is not open air or your vehicle is better than being in the open air or your vehicle.
Okay.
You really want as much mass between you and radiation as possible if you are anywhere near it, or if you think you might be near it. It's, mass and what kind of mass starts getting into the weeds. And if you're really interested, go do the research on that.
Yeah, there's all kinds of numbers of like the
there's the halving principle and all this other stuff that you start getting into based on what kind of material you're using.
I'm like, meow, just tell me what to do and I will do that.
Right. So, but I think really what you're looking for is just as much mass between you and the possible outside sources as you can. You don't want to be in anything that is exposed metal, which is why you don't want to be in a vehicle.
Okay.
You're starting to deal with the neutron radiation at that point, which is more of an issue with big blasts and things like that. But anyway, so just metal bad after this. Just stay away from, not like forks and knives and things, but just like cars and stuff like that generally can actually, in certain circumstances, soak up radiation.
If you live in a storage, people make the storage units into homes.
Yeah.
Maybe not such a great place to be in that circumstance.
Well, and again, this is all, mass and distance, and time are the major factors when it comes to any of these things. So I would say the other thing is you want to be in the most interior room possible. And, ventilation is a concern, is really kind of the concern, is actually what people, when they say tape off your windows and stuff, really what they're talking about is it's air leakage. Most modern homes are sealed up pretty well. I wouldn't be super concerned about it. And really, there's not that much you could do about it. If you wanted to tape things up, you could. I'm not that concerned about fallout in general getting in that way. Maybe it might be a good idea to turn off your HVAC system so that you're not creating negative or positive air pressure within your structure. But, those are the things. The other thing, too, is remember, you got to be able to breathe. So, don't put a plastic bag over your head or anything crazy. And I think the other thing, too, is if you're in a downtown area, most buildings over a few stories have a basement in most cities. These are usually mechanical rooms, and usually they even have running water in them. It's likely any building with a basement before, say, before 1975 and maybe after 1940, it probably was at one time actually designated a fallout shelter. And probably, none of the supplies are going to be there. None of the logistics really are in place for it, most likely. And as long as somebody hasn't really jacked with the ventilation, it probably has this, the original ventilation that was set up for that and the original shielding. So for initial terms, might not be a bad place to write it out. If I was going to have to write it out in some downtown building, it would be a basement of some sort like that.
Yeah. And hopefully you have like food or water.
Yeah. I wouldn't be worried about, food would be nice, but I wouldn't worry about it in the immediate.
Yeah. 2 weeks.
Yeah. I would be worried with water. That would be my concern.
And like you say, a lot of times they have water running right to them as long as the infrastructure was still there.
Yeah.
Okay. So what, besides the initial radiation, what do we need to be concerned about, after that? So obviously you're going to have your 2 weeks of the initial fallout, stuff like that. So
radiation is the big sexy, right?
Exactly.
It's the celebrity of the nuclear war movie here, but the real damage and the real death toll for conventional nukes that we're, or anything that we're going to be talking about that's not theoretical, really the big culprits are actually the blast and the heat wave. Immediately after that, that's actually what's going to kill most people. The radiation itself is going to be either fallout that gets into the atmosphere or radiation at ground level. I would be most concerned with the panic, the chaos, the overwhelm that is going to happen on emergency services, and just general government ineptness.
Which we've seen a lot in a lot of the disasters.
Yeah. So, and government and panicking people, otherwise smart people do incredibly dumb things in a state of panic, and government, is inept in good times. And when they get panicked, look out. And they're in the business of looking busy. Right. Do something. It doesn't matter how bad it is. It's just like, oh, we got to look busy. So I think initially that's going to be the big problem that you're dealing with.
And you can pretty much assume that like all your grocery stores are just going to be wiped out because everybody will be freak out panic time. And you see before any kind of hurricane, any kind of event, that it just goes crazy. So you better have it.
This goes back to being a prepper, and this goes back to, why I would say 14 days at an absolute minimum for an event like this. Really longer would be better, but 14 days at a minimum, because the fallout itself it has a very short half-life. And while I wouldn't necessarily want to leave the house very much, it's still like, after 96 hours, you're probably going to be okay. I just wouldn't want to track it back.
Do a wash down when you get in or whatever.
I wouldn't want to go roll around in the front yard or anything, or making fallout angels in the front yard. So,
this is a question that I didn't prep you with, but what about rain? Like, what if it rains at the same time? Is that going to be like the acid rain or whatever, radiation rain, or
sort of? So what's going to happen is the fallout, if there was a blast of any size, a lot of it goes straight up because it can't really go down very easily. Mm-hmm. So essentially the earth acts like a shape charge. So it goes up, it goes into the air, and then it's spread out. And then what you're concerned with are the prevailing winds. So what direction are they going? In general, prevailing winds in the U.S. are southeast. In general. So, if you're downwind of something, then within a few miles.
Yeah, they had smoke popping up in New York from the wildfires here in California.
Oh yeah, it's like we were having we had this like weird haze here for a couple of weeks, and somebody was like, "Oh yeah, it's the sand blowing in from the Sahara," and I was like, "That stuff again?"
Like, really?
And this happens every couple of years. I don't know where else in the country gets it, but I know we got it where it was like 2 weeks of this haze, and it was African sand or dust.
Oh, we've had a couple of months of haze now.
Well, y'all are dealing with that. I think as far as the rain goes, you don't want to be outside if you're this is like any of it, right? Like if you're still in the time period where fallout is a concern. And again, I'm making the distinction between fallout is like dirt and dust that's been irradiated, and that is not the same as actual ionized particles or radiological material.
Up and then comes back down, basically.
Generally, yeah. I mean, it's
okay.
None of it's you don't want to be. Yeah, in general, I don't think with fallout. I'm not saying go out and lick your car after an event. But generally, most of the fallout that we're talking about here is just irradiated dirt and stuff. It's not the actual radiological isotopes or anything like that.
Right. If the rain hits you, it's not going to like eat through your skin and everything.
No. But what it will do, and rain actually, what people should pray for rain after an event like this, because really what you want it to do is you want that rain to come in, and it's going to essentially, for all intents and purposes, gather up and push all the dust and debris and everything that's in the air out of the air. And
that makes sense.
It'll get onto the ground, but at least now it's not in the air, because really with two of the major particles that you're dealing with, alpha and beta, like you want that stuff washed out of the air as quickly as possible, and you want it into the ground, and all of this stuff has a pretty short half-life. So, yeah, I would say, don't be outside while there's fallout. And that would include if there's a rainstorm, but really you want to get that stuff out of the air. So, the point I was making with alpha and beta. So alpha and beta particles, and we can get into this in a bit, but
I was going to actually lead you into that question next anyway. So let's just jump right there.
Those two particles in particular are, I wouldn't eat it. Well, actually, that's kind of the point I'm making. But like, I wouldn't hold it in my hand. But for the most part, like alpha being one of the nastiest, and we'll get into that in a second. But like they're not that big of a deal they're a big deal, but as in the scope of what we're talking about, relatively speaking, it's the real concern is if you actually ingest it, and by ingest it being like if you inhale it, or if you eat some food or you gets in your mouth and you swallow, something like that. Before we get off into what are the particles and stuff like that, and what is radiation, I think the other big things to be concerned about. I think I touched on this a little bit. But to put a fine at it, I would worry about the loss of civil services. As much as we may like to make fun of the government, those services are helpful, and a lot of those people are preppers too. So, they're preppers that are out there, a lot of them, trying to help and on a mission and trying to do good. So, there's that. There's likely going to be a power interruption from an EMP. Unless somebody at some point gets off their butt and actually even in an event like that, I don't know how much the shielding that is being proposed to deal with EMPs. I don't really know how effective it's actually going to be, but if it ever even gets put in place at all. But just count on, you're going to have power interruptions, possibly, likely water contamination, although the water contamination is not instant as far as what's coming out of your pipes. It's still got to get from the plant to you. So you probably have enough time to fill up a bathtub and as many water jugs as you can.
Be the first one in there to get it done, right?
Right, right. So there's that. But, over the next coming days and stuff, like basically expect all basic city infrastructure to be, all utilities to be gone.
Yeah.
And then the nation would essentially grind to a halt for, at least a few days, probably more likely weeks. So.
Yeah, until they could get it back on.
Yeah.
Okay, so how about our the particles? Because I know there's a difference in between them, and I know it's a long explanation too. So let's just kind of like nitty gritty it up. But just what are we concerned about?
So I will make it really simple. There are 3 kinds of particles and 2 kinds of waves to be aware of, and even being aware of them, I don't know that it's necessarily all that helpful to be aware of them, but it's interesting. So the 3 particles are alpha, beta, and neutron. The ones that are going to be the most dangerous are going to be alpha and neutron. And then your waves are going to be X-ray and gamma. Gamma is the one that all of us know from The Incredible Hulk. And a few other, I think Spider-Man 2, there was something with gamma radiation. They were radiating spiders or something. So the alpha particle is going to be the heaviest particle. It's going to be the thing that can travel the least amount of distance. You're talking like, as it's decaying and giving off radiation, you're talking like an inch. But it's pretty powerful stuff. And so while the actual radiation itself could actually be blocked with a sheet of paper, if you ingested it, it's a very destabilized atom. So it's going to...
That's like most concerned right outside of the blast zone.
Most concerned right out, like if you're standing on top of it, holding it in your hand, it's, which likely if you were in the blast zone, unless you were there as part of the cleanup crew,
fair enough. Okay,
you're not
gotcha.
Gonna be there anymore.
Yeah.
I wouldn't worry about it too much. Again, but it's, as far as the actual isotopes go, it's one of the ones that it's like, it's really dangerous, but really most dangerous if you actually inhale it or ingest it somehow. It's one of the most destabilized atoms of all of these, and it's because it's also the heaviest, it's going to cause the most cell damage, which cancer, death, general bodily organs breaking down. Beta's beta, it's And then neutron that's kind of what we were talking about earlier, a neutron bomb. So the neutron particle is, I don't know, kind of the super stud of the three. It can go the furthest. It can do the craziest things. It's when you're talking about, metal becoming irradiated. It's neutron that's doing that. And that's, it's also the highest penetrating. So that's actually what makes a neutron bomb work. The way a neutron bomb is supposed to work is that it's able to pass through armored and shielded buildings and vehicles and things like that and kill the occupants, but leave things intact. And whether or not the nuances of a neutron bomb, like I said, you're getting into the weeds because it's totally theoretical.
At this point, yeah.
And geeks want to argue about it, but it's like, go build one and then tell me.
So what about your canned food stores, though? Like, because I've heard, like they can be contaminated by radiation, so you really shouldn't eat them anymore. However, like I've heard both sides, so I don't really know what. Oh, so I eat my canned goods or what?
Well, yeah, and it was funny because I don't know. Sometimes people worry about things that it's like, if you are close enough to the blast, if you're close enough to the blast that your cans got irradiated by neutrons,
you're probably not here anymore.
And so did your silverware, and so did the metal in your chair, and the metal fillings in your head, or your kids' braces.
That's true.
So that's true. I think your canned food is the least of your concerns at that moment. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I was like, what? Now I've got nuclear canned food on my shelf. Like, what's going on with that?
Well, so I wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go back into the blast. Like, if we're talking about post-nuclear war or something or other, I wouldn't go back into the blast zone to go rummaging through
forage,
grocery stores and storage anyway. So
right. Okay.
Yeah. I think people worrying about their canned goods becoming.
I know. I was like, where did this even come from? Okay, so how about wild foraging and stuff like that, though? If we were going to go outside, it's all coming down now. So what about the animals?
Here's the thing with flora and fauna and foraging. So if you're dealing with animals, likely, I think, I have nothing to base this on, but I think animals would most likely be quick to vacate the area. Mm-hmm. But that's just me, and that's a complete assumption. So, but they're animals, and what do? They eat they eat other animals, and they eat plants.
They eat the plants, and they drink the water that's going down the river, and
and all of this is covered in fallout. So, while they may not be, and while those animals. So, and I think the other thing too is it's like you can be foraging in an area that was not in the prevailing wind pattern of the fallout, but the animal could have been in that area and then traveled into this area, or
all right,
or who knows. So I think in general it's best to be a good prepper, have stuff on hand, and don't worry about your cans being irradiated. And so I think in general I wouldn't. I'd be very hard pressed to eat any plants or animals for quite a while after an event like this.
Yeah. What was interesting about Chernobyl is now it's one of the most ecologically diverse areas now because of the fallout, and then everybody moved out, right? And they have the red deer there, and they had hunted that thing to just about extinction over in Europe, and so they have one of the largest red deer populations back in Chernobyl, and that I found that really, really interesting, the rebound.
Chernobyl's a funky place, and there's a lot of myth around Chernobyl. There are actually the inhabitants of the area, most of them left, not all of them, and there are still people there, and there are people that snuck back in. And so there's a lot of debate, when you start talking about radiation and fallout and things like that, and talking about how dangerous it is or how bad it is or how close do you have to be. It's like, well, it's a very complex topic, and I think it's something that in general we still don't really understand well enough, because there's actually like there's beaches in Brazil that are, if you stuck a Geiger counter on them, they go crazy, but it's one of the most popular beaches in Brazil.
Huh.
So radiation is a very complicated topic, and what it is and how far it reaches and what are the implications,
what kind of damage it would do,
birth defects, and whether or not Godzilla is going to come out of the, Chernobyl or something. I don't know. I guess Godzilla with the Russian accent.
Water sources is a no, right? We no like natural water sources for a while.
I would
rivers.
So I would be quicker to drink water from a natural source than I would eat a plant or an animal while foraging. So water could be filtered. And you would still go through the same process of filtering and sanitizing, both ends of that process.
Using like distillation or something like that instead. I mean, I don't think
you could do that too, but again, like I think you're not talking about microscopic particles, and you're talking about, stuff that has in the world of radiation has a pretty short half-life. Half-life in the context of what we're talking about as far as that it's short. There's other stuff that has really short half-life, but it's outside the bounds of this. So with that, I think it would be my last resort, but you can't go very long without water. So if you've exhausted your stores, then you're probably going to be okay with a good filter, or even like if you want to start getting into like the more bushcraft style filters of, making your own charcoal and
charcoal. Yeah. Okay.
And doing that. I don't know if I'd trust one of the sand trap filters. That's really biological in nature and less about filtration.
Isn't it like activated charcoal or something that's supposed to be good for your mask and radiation and stuff?
So activated charcoal, I asked somebody who was a chemist, I was like, activated, he's like, don't go down that rabbit hole. Charcoal is, for all intents and purposes, charcoal is charcoal. Just don't, I think worrying about whether or not it's activated or not. I think activated charcoal maybe. So I think somebody from the marketing department got a hold of that one.
Got a hold of that?
I think so.
I was like,
so
dude,
it's not. I wouldn't worry about it too much.
Okay, awesome. That's good to know, because everything you can check off your list of I don't got to worry about that. That's much better, right? I got enough training to do, medical knowledge to learn, like without worrying about any kind of thing.
Right.
That.
You're like, I don't want to become a chemist.
I'm good. Like.
Yeah. So I to back up for the activated, like, again, like I would do that as a last resort. I'm pretty confident you could do a good enough job or a good job of filtering out everything, using, and most likely if somebody's in that event, they're going to be pretty good and freaked out, and they're probably going to overdo everything anyway. So there's that advantage. But I think in general, filtering the water like really, really well, you could distill it. That should do the trick, but distillation is a little more difficult in most instances than just filtering. So I wouldn't use my.
It's worth learning though.
I would do more filtering than just using my dirty sock. But in general, I think you're probably okay.
Okay. Specific type of clothing. So like if you got a hazmat suit, great. However,
okay. So hazmat suits, man, that's not even a rabbit hole. That's a rat hole. Hazmat suits are hot. They're bulky. They're uncomfortable. You're more likely to suffer a heat stroke wearing a hazmat suit than you are actually protecting yourself from whatever it is you're worried about. There's the other issue of when you are in a hazmat suit, someone has to decontaminate you, because like you have to take that thing off at some point,
right?
And then as soon as you take it off, if you don't have somebody else to decontaminate you, then you're going to get whatever was all over that hazmat suit on you. This is more of an issue with infectious diseases than it is with what we're talking about here. But when it comes to hazmat suits, I'm just like, oh no, not the hazmat suit conversation. And then the other thing is, people are like, well, what about the Army hazmat suits? Those those have an acceptable failure rate. So,
oh, excellent. That's wonderful.
Right, because if you're dealing with thousands and thousands of soldiers, if you have a 0.25% failure rate, well, it's a few soldiers, and that's kind of, it's the government's viewpoint of things. Whereas you or I, no, I don't want that quarter.
No, there's no acceptable failure rate there.
Right. So the answer is just, avoid it. As far as and getting into gas masks and stuff like that, as prepper guys, we love our facial hair. You're going to have to shave all of that off before you put on your gas mask. It's not going to work with your facial hair, with your big bushy beard on, or even, this thinner beard I have.
Even more of a reason to get my husband to shave it.
My wife paid for me to have a straight razor shave one time, and the guy got it halfway off, and she's like, "How fast can you grow it back?"
Yeah. See, no, I keep my hair long.
Yeah.
And he keeps his face shaved.
Yeah.
And it's like 5 o'clock shadow all the time, but hey, it's close enough.
Yeah. I think with her it was just the fact that I have a baby face. So then, as far as things to wear, so in the neighborhood of protective gear is Tyvek. They make the disposable Tyvek suits that are like $14 or $20 a piece. You can get them on Amazon in bulk.
That, I got a bunch of them given to me, actually.
Yeah, and I have a bunch left, and I have them for like any time I need to run network cable or anything like that, so that I'm not crawling around in insulation. The thing to remember about those are that they do rip pretty easily.
Yes, they do.
Like all of these things, they are hot because they're not allowing any kind of airflow, which like your clothing allows more airflow than you think it does. These things do not, and then you still have to cover your mouth and your eyes. If you had to go outside for some reason, you could put
it's better than nothing.
Right, you could put one of these on. It's better than having to throw your clothes away every time. You could put one of these on. You could do whatever you need to do as long as you had the rest of the protective gear on. And then you could take it off and leave it outside. You're still, as soon as you take it off and leave it outside, you're still going to have to decontaminate yourself, because you could have gotten fallout on you when you're taking this suit off, or, it still could have got the few exposed areas of skin on your face. So I'd say it's best not to go outside, but if you had
just regular clothes on, is it best to have like the long sleeves, and you wouldn't want to be in the shirt like I am, right? Like, or does it not make a difference at all?
Again, it's not going to make that big of a difference, because when you're starting to talk about, if you're talking about radiological material that's that radioactive, then you're at ground zero. Unless somehow a chunk of the somehow a chunk of the unspent material is sitting in your front yard and you start playing with it. You're
okay, got it.
Fine. Yeah,
that's actually comforting. Yeah. That's actually
again, I wouldn't be cavalier about any of this, but it's not. Yeah, the long sleeves and just stay inside. It's
not going to really make that much
stay
difference.
inside.
Yeah. So if somebody gets radiation poisoning, this is not contagious at all, right? Can we touch them or like?
Okay, so complicated topic. In general, yes, they should be fine. You can touch them. You can treat their burns and things like that. You want to decontaminate them like everything else that we've talked about here. Soap and water. Don't scrub them raw.
Right.
That's not helping. You're just trying to
get like the push broom out.
Yeah, that might be a little much. That might be a little uncomfortable. Because really, what you don't really want, and one of the reasons I keep harping on it, don't scrub people raw, is you don't want to create any openings in the skin where the fallout, the irradiated dirt and dust and stuff could actually get into the cut and be more difficult to wash off.
Right.
And so you're not doing yourself any favors under that, which, and one of the reasons I keep doing it, people panicked. Hopefully they remember that, which actually,
right. So they're like,
I have one more tip for this.
As much as I can.
Right. So, but I have one more tip that I want to stick a pin in, but to stay on topic with the exact question, what do you do with that? So for the most part, you're going to be talking about people that suffered burns because they were exposed to the initial flash and, the gamma and x-rays and whatnot. Mm-hmm. If they are sick, it could be because they somehow ingested either radioactive fallout, or if by some really weird chance that they did actually come in contact with one of the isotopes and ingest it somehow, they could be radioactive. It just depends on how big of a piece, and it gets complicated. And the reality is you have no way of knowing that. I would keep them away from kids.
Okay.
But as far as dealing, anybody who's been exposed,
Like,
anybody you think has been exposed like that, I would just keep them away from kids. But in general, they're probably fine for
like
you
send
to
your
treat.
old people over there to take care of them.
Yeah. Let the old people do
Yeah.
it. Always let the old people do it. Yeah.
Yeah. That'll work.
Yeah. So the thing I wanted to stick up to stick a pin in and pull back out before I forget is, if you are in a downtown or something like that, one of the things I forgot to mention, if you're going in, and one of the things you could do is, if you thought you were covered in fallout or there was an issue, what you could actually do is go into one of the main bathrooms, strip down naked. Something about nuclear war. Everybody's getting naked. So strip down naked, because that cloth and clothing is going to hold on to any of the material. Push it off to a far corner, and then rip the soap dispenser off the wall. You're going to want all the soap out of it, and then you're going to set off the fire alarm. And basically, you've just created yourself a big shower and a big decontamination chamber, and then you can use the soap to wash yourself down really well, and then I guess walk into the fallout shelter naked. But yeah, don't put your clothes back on.
Yeah, everybody.
So,
woo! All right.
There you go. Can that tip can work in some biological instances too? But yeah, that's
Okay.
There's one down and dirty kind of James Bourne or Jason Bourne kind of way of
there you go.
decontaminating
Of getting it
yourself.
off of you.
Yeah,
because that's always my concern. Like, what would we do with those people, and then how do you pull that off? So
set off the fire, the sprinklers.
Yeah, and if you're at your house, like, just hose them outside.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. Like, you're trying to keep all of that contaminated material outside. So no matter how uncomfortable they are, getting hosed down in broad daylight, tough. Don't
bad.
Don't bring
suck
it in
up.
the house.
How about wells? Like, because we have a deep, nice well, and would that water source become contaminated? Maybe the holding tanks on top of the ground would.
So I
what
feel
about
like
the well itself?
I want to give a warning to this. I feel like by answering this, I'm starting to drive outside my lane.
Your box, yeah,
and so I would say it's probably okay. It depends on how well it's sealed, and it depends on, is it truly a sealed up well that it's not going to get any kind of fallout?
Yeah, because there's still like the pipes, everything that go down into there. How well does that all?
Yeah, because I know, like, I have a very unusual house. We live on a very large piece of property in the middle of the city, and we also happen to have a well. It's a long story how we got this this situation. But yeah, exactly. When we saw it, I was like, "Ooh, I'll take it." So so anyway, but I know like with our well, like there's definitely air. There's open areas around the well itself, even though it's fairly sealed. Yeah, it's still there's still dust and debris and stuff I'm sure can get down in there. So I don't. I think the best answer is I don't know, but I don't think so. I think you might be okay, but I think this all goes back to have enough stuff to be able to.
How hard up are you at that point, right?
Right. I mean, I would rather chance a little radiation 96 hours after the fact than I would
not drink water for 4 days
and die of dehydration. Yeah. I mean, neither way of dying is good, but I think I'm going to deal with the immediate problem, which is dehydration.
Yep. Yeah, I agree there. Mm-hmm. Well, I think we have just about killed this topic. I don't know what else I could actually ask you about, but I've been really dying to do this episode because, it's just, you hear so much BS and you're like, okay, what is like the nitty gritty here?
Yeah.
And, it doesn't sound, actually, it doesn't sound as frightening as when I first started the interview. So, so that's a good thing,
It's not good, but it's not as bad as people think. Yeah.
Right. Keep a level head and do it just like
as long as you're not at ground zero or in the immediate three layers of the blast zone, then you're probably have a good the chances are good you're going to be just fine.
Okay.
So,
all right.
And I would say, as far as people concerned with EMPs, definitely check out Dr. Bradley's work. He's got a great YouTube channel. He has a few books out. and he disproves a lot of very common myths and common practices people think will help them, and also dispels a lot of myths about what people will think will actually be impacted by an EMP. So if it's something you're concerned about, definitely go check out his stuff as far as like Faraday cages and learning about EMPs. He's probably the person I would trust their information on the topic the most in that realm. So
excellent. Great. It's always great to have a resource to go to, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you provide everybody with where to get a hold of you if they want to do so, and then everybody should head over and check out Into the Rabbit Hole. Cool podcast.
Thanks. So the name of the show is In the Rabbit Hole. It is intherabbithole.com. Again, we focus on helping people stay safe in person and sound in mind. And that is summed up in stay safe and sound. And the show is going into its 8th season, and we're now starting up a YouTube channel and it's basically be a mirror image of the podcast, just in video form. During a normal season, it's usually 1 episode a week. Those episodes are typically 30 to 45 minutes, sometimes longer. But that's usually about it. And then we take a couple months off during the summer. So I release short episodes just to keep everybody.
Oh, lucky you.
There you go. So then we usually do short episodes, like 5-minute episodes every 2 or 3 weeks, just a little something to keep people's appetite wet for the summer. And then then the show's format itself is a few different. Some of the episodes are subject matter expert kind of Q&A sessions. Some of them are where I sit down with prepper fiction authors like you, and we talk about their book and talk about the one of the most fun parts of prep, which is, prepper fiction. And then sometimes I do monologues and I wax philosophically, or I'll give how-tos on specific subjects. So that is intherabbithole.com in a nutshell.
Nice. Well, thank you so much, Aaron, for coming on the show and sharing all this great information with us. It was my pleasure.
Happy to help. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks so much for coming on the show, Aaron, spending your time with us. Really long interview today, so I just want to wrap it up real quick. If you need notes or you want more information on the podcast, you can head on over to my website, to the Survival Guide, and all the episodes are posted there. Well, I'm getting them all over there. But this one will definitely be up over there, and that's where you can go and just digest the information at a slower pace in writing. So head on over there and check it out. Thank you to all of my Patreon subscribers. Love you guys. You guys are what keeps the show going and on the air, and I really appreciate everything that you do for me. And we also have some great bonus content from this interview over there if you want to head over and check out your bonus members page. Thank you to all my listeners. Love you guys. Happy to have you out there educating your mind, and I'm happy to be here entertaining you. I've got lots of great stories coming, so I cannot wait to share them with you. But until next time, remember, dream, survive, thrive.
Thank you for joining Sara for this episode of the Changing Earth podcast. Don't forget to pick up your copy of Day After Disaster, Without Land, The Walls of Freedom, and Battle for the South at www.author.sarafhathaway.com. If you love Sara's books and this podcast, please head over to Amazon or iTunes and let everyone know by leaving a review.